What? Are you doing season 2 of that stupid show?
Honey, where are you going?
Where are you going?
Again? Just where are you going?
Where are you going? You're not going to the bar again, are you?
You like hanging out, drinking beer at the bar, talking sports? Come on out and join us weekly. Guys at the Bar Talking Sports, your podcast for just that. Hanging out, drinking some beer, talking sports. It's your boy, Hanger, looking for a beer. Actually, we're all looking for a beer, so if you want to buy the guys a beer, at Guys at the Bar Talking Sports on Venmo. That's it. Easy as drinking a beer. What's up, y'all? This is your boy Hanger, and I am doing a little bit of a different episode this week just to wrap up the weekend of week 1, which was a very exciting weekend of football. It was the first time in the entire history of the AP that there was 5 ranked teams in the top 25 that were playing against each other. And it was absolutely exciting to watch. There was a lot of football. It went from Thursday until Monday night. And I'm going to go ahead and go over all of the games, not every single game, but most of the games of those top 25 teams and the ones that maybe you guys might be interested in hearing about as well. And then go ahead and wrap up from there. I think I'm going to do this type of show every single week on Monday or Tuesday or even on Sunday evening after the weekend is over. The weekend of football is over for college football, just because we don't want to be talking about last week's game every Thursday show when we do a live show at the bar. I wanted to go ahead and put together a show that highlights the best points that happened through the weekend and then move on from there. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do from here on out. So I'll be going and doing 2 shows per week, and that's going to be one on my own and maybe bring in a couple of guests here and there on that show as well. And then we'll go ahead and do the Thursday show looking ahead to the week ahead of college football, as well as NFL and any other notable things that are going on in the sports world as well. So check this out. Here's how we're going to start it off. Thursday night, you had the North Carolina Tar Heels playing the Hokies of Virginia Tech, as well as Ohio State playing Minnesota. Number 4, Ohio State playing Minnesota. They had high expectations going into the season, and they met those expectations. Now, there was a couple of they wobbled a little bit on their defense and on their offense in the first half, and our boy Ripper actually predicted that, to be honest with you. He said that he would not be surprised if Minnesota's winning after the first half. But then Ohio State would be able to pull away during the second half, and all of a sudden they would win. And that's exactly what happened. Our boy Ripper is the predictor, like I always say. And Ohio State ends up winning 45-31. Like I said, defense was off a bit. Offense was off a little bit as well. It took them a while to get their feet under them. But third quarter, Ohio State puts up 21 points. Another 14 points in the fourth quarter, and they end up winning that game 45-31. Excellent game. Great way to start college football. Now, you would almost think that we recorded last Thursday's show before or after that game, but I can assure you that we did record that show before the game. If you want to check it out, you could hear Ripper the Predictor make that prediction, and it's just absolutely amazing that he was able to call that. Next game for Ohio State is going to be Oregon next week, and on the 11th, Ohio's favored by 13 points in that game. So go ahead and check that one out. We'll be talking about that on next week's show as well. Number 9, North Carolina Tar Heels versus the Hokies of Virginia Tech. Can you believe that nobody called number 9 North Carolina Tar Heels to lose that particular game? They lost 17-10. Now, I wish I had the Chief here to talk about this thing, but let's be honest, man. They did not live up to the hype that we expected of them. The offense did not live up to the hype of what was expected of them as well. Next week, we'll see what happens. North Carolina, I don't exactly have who they're playing in front of me, but they could always make up for room. Supposedly, the quarterback over at North Carolina is supposed to be on fire, so we'll see how he does next week as well. Oklahoma versus Tulane. Oklahoma struggled. It was an offensive game as expected. Easily they ran down the field. Oklahoma had no problem running down the field, but you know what? Neither did Tulane. Tulane had no problem running down the field as well. Spencer Rattler was making some mistakes here and there, but you know what? Lincoln Riley is a great coach, and Oklahoma ended up winning. Now, they're ranked number 2. I don't suppose that they're going to be ranked number 2 after this week, though, against the Tulane team that did not have high expectations for their season whatsoever. Oklahoma barely squeaks out that win, 40-35. Is Oklahoma a playoff team at this point? Who knows? It's hard to tell after the first week, obviously, so we're not even going to make any predictions on that. But if I had my boy Ripper, the predictor, here, he might be able to make some predictions. Who knows? But anyway, is Spencer Rattler even a Heisman candidate right now? That's another question that you have, because he was able to, put up some points. He put up 40 points, but then again, he had 2 interceptions as well, which allowed for 14 points on Tulane. So Oklahoma has an easy matchup next week against Western Carolina University, which is on Saturday the 11th. Going to throw in Nebraska. That's on my notes, so I just wanted to throw that in there. Nebraska beat Fordham 52-7. Nobody cares except for me, probably, so I'll move on from that. But after terrible outcomes against Illinois, Nebraska had very low expectations coming into the season. Now, for the rest of the season, although they had some pretty high expectations before that, so hopefully, Scott Frost got to try out some plays and get his team in order so that next week they can start winning some more games. We'll see what happens. Number 19. Penn State played Wisconsin. Now, this was a defensive battle. Both teams put up very few points, but Penn State ends up winning that game as well. Now, everybody was talking about Penn State's defense being hardcore after that game, and we'll see. Penn State has a lot of different games that they're going to be playing over the season against their Big Ten opponents, and you're looking forward to Michigan. You're looking forward to Ohio State. You're looking forward to a lot of those big matchups, and we'll see what happens. But next week, Penn State is playing Eastern Michigan, I believe. So we'll go ahead and no, they're playing Ball State. I'm sorry, and then Wisconsin will be playing Eastern Michigan. Wisconsin is definitely not living up to any hype, but I don't think there was a lot of hype going in as well to this season for them. Michigan versus Western Michigan. Very convincing win for Michigan, 47-14. Currently, Western Michigan is not a foe that that should be feared by any means. So, Michigan was expected to win that game. They play with Washington next week. It was supposed to be a big game, but Washington ended up losing to Montana last weekend. So this is not going to be a big game on Michigan's schedule as well. They're probably expected to win that, but I heard that the spread is only about 6 points when they play Washington. So who knows? But it is Michigan. They are known for having some wobbly seasons, and we'll see what happens. Probably the biggest game on Saturday, we'll save that for later, which was the Georgia-Clemson game, and I'll just move on to the number 1 Alabama Crimson Tide versus number 14 Miami. Bryce Young was looking very comfortable and well protected against Miami's defense. Bryce Young has a first-class offensive line in front of him, and he was throwing the ball. They were running the ball. He was on target so often. All the people that were saying that Miami was going to make them, give them some sort of challenge were completely wrong. And I've heard a lot of people that were saying that Miami was going to beat them. Now they're making excuses that Miami was just a team that was great in the 80s, not no more and all that. You do wonder how Miami cannot seem to recruit whatsoever being in Miami. Come on, who doesn't want to go to Miami when they're 18 years old? and play for a team like that as well. But you know what? Alabama's doing the recruiting, and that's exactly what they've done. Miami held Alabama to 3 points in the fourth quarter, but that's a little too late. Because obviously they were playing Alabama's third team probably by that point. As our man, the Chief, predicted, Alabama was able to put up point after point after point. And Chief, what he said is he thought it'd be like 50-3, and the only reason why Miami was going to be able to score 3 points is because Alabama in the fourth quarter puts in their third string, and certainly that was almost the case. 44-13. 44-13 was the outcome of that game, and Alabama plays Mercer next week. That's an easy game for them. Miami might have a tough time against Appalachian State if they played the way they did against Alabama, and App State is not somebody to be messed with. So we'll see what happens there as well. Moving on to another game, Iowa State Cyclones. Man, did they have some hype coming into this season, right? But they may have been the biggest letdown of the week. Big 12, high expectations. They were the one that was supposed to compete against Oklahoma for the Big 10 or Big 12 title. Definitely not a team that I think is going to be able to pull much off by the end of the season. And the reason why I say that is because they barely beat Northern Iowa 16-10. Offense, very little of it. It was just, they were favored by 28 points. And next week they head down to play the Iowa Hawkeyes. How's that going to end up for them? I don't think that's going to end up very good either. But everyone expects that the number 7 Iowa State Cyclones might drop down to number 9. Hawkeyes, after beating Indiana, number 18 Hawkeyes versus number 17 Indiana, they're expected to move up in the rankings, but they still are saying that the Iowa State is going to be ahead of the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa Hawkeyes, man, 34-6 against a team, an Indiana team that's supposed to be pretty solid, and that was one of the several top 25 teams that were playing against each other. And 34-6, Iowa beats the pants off of Indiana. Very much a game that puts Iowa out there and says, here, that's a statement game for Iowa. It says, we're going to win the West of the Big Ten. And we'll see what happens. They might end up playing Ohio State. Who knows what, only time will tell. But that is a team that definitely has high expectations going forward. Like I said, the Hawkeyes are going to be playing Iowa State next week. Number 11, Oregon, barely gets by Fresno State. Number 11, Oregon. So this is the Pac-12. Nobody really takes the Pac-12 seriously anyway, but 24 points scored by Fresno State, and Oregon wins 31-24. Ohio State plays Oregon next week at home on a noon game, so that'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, Oregon's going to be flying out there. They're going to be a little bit jet-lagged, so Ohio State is also favored by 13 points in that game. That would be an exclamation point on Ohio State's win this past week as well, that says, hey, we are here to play, but you never know. Oregon might come out there and play some football as well. We'll see what happens. Number 13, Florida Gators versus Florida Atlantic. That was a game that I watched because I am a Florida Gators fan. Florida has an excellent running game with Malik Davis, Adrian Pierce, and quarterback Emory Jones. They were having no problem running the ball against the Florida Atlantic Owls. Emory Jones was nothing but spotty in the passing game. As usual, no one has high expectations of this guy. Whenever he had 2 interceptions, those things got into his head as well. Anthony Richardson, which is the backup quarterback, 6'4", 240 pounds, big boy, can move the ball and is fast. A lot of the fans got excited about this guy when he went in, hearkening back to the Tebow era when he was backup to Chris Leak, and everyone was saying, we want Richardson in next week and all this stuff. Dan Mullins is not pulling Emory from that starter spot, though time will only tell what happens, though. But Dan Mullins is known to be the guy that'll give his starter the benefit of the doubt, that'll work with that starter, help him to do those reads and so forth. So Emory Jones will not be pulled, and I don't expect that to happen. Emory Jones does have more experience as well. He's been on the team for three to four seasons already. We'll see what happens, but they are playing Florida or USF next week, University of South Florida in Tampa, a team that got their butts kicked by, I think it was NC State this week, and there are no expectations that Florida can lose that game, but I just want to see a good game where we get to see Emory Jones and what he can do, few mistakes, no interceptions, and just get that passing game down, because in 2 weeks when they play Alabama, there is no excuse by that point, and you need to be ready and on fire. Notre Dame versus Florida State, probably the most interesting game, in my opinion, to watch for the weekend. And Jake Cohn, transfer from Wisconsin, is the starting quarterback for Notre Dame. And the opening drive, Coach Brian Kelly for Notre Dame just really shows his confidence in his starter. It's the 4th and 2, and he allows him to go for it. And not only do they go for it, it wasn't just a running play. He throws a 15, maybe 20-yard pass for a first down. But not only did they do that, but Michael Meyer, who caught it, ended up running for a touchdown. Big opening possession for Notre Dame. But it didn't keep on going like that. Now, Notre Dame was able to win the first half. They ended up winning the third quarter even. But Florida State comes back with unanswered points. I believe it was 17 unanswered points to tie the game with 45 seconds left. Mackenzie Milton is the quarterback from UCF who came in to the game on the fourth quarter. Finally, FSU puts him in, and that offense went from fumbling and bumbling to confidence, putting up 2 touchdown drives together for 14 points, and then a scoring drive where they got 3 points to go ahead and tie that game. And just an amazing game, fun to watch, goes into overtime. One big problem is that Notre Dame's defense was able to stand up, push Florida State back about 10 yards. They had to go for a field goal and missed it. So then Notre Dame goes in, they do a couple running plays, put up a field goal, and win the game, barely squeaking it out, 41-38. Notre Dame always gets the benefit of the doubt. I can't imagine that they fall from that number 9 spot, but they're definitely not going to be moving up. Florida State might even get into the top 25 because of that game. That was a very fun, interesting game to watch. If you ever get a chance to watch games that are those replay games, definitely sit down and watch that if you didn't check it out. It was great. Everyone's saying FSU is back. You know what? I hope so, because it's great when Florida and Florida State are both ranked and playing each other the last game of the season. It toughens the schedule for Florida, and when Florida wins that game, it looks a lot better. Moving on, Ole Miss beats Louisville 43-24 with great offensive performance by Matt Corral, and he is definitely someone that's being looked at as a Heisman Trophy contender. We'll see what happens, with Lane Kiffin and his crazy offense that he runs with lots of throwing, lots of passing. He can definitely get those yards up. But then again, when you're doing all those passes and when you're doing long bombs and so forth, there's a lot of room for error, especially when it comes to the interceptions, and we'll see what happens. But I don't think Matt Corral had any interceptions last week. Ole Miss will be playing Austin Peay, hosting them at 7:30 next week, so check that out. Couple other notable games that were going on. I just wanted to mention those just because I know what our listeners, and also through the Facebook group that we have, I know where you guys are at. So go ahead and check these games. I'm going to go ahead and go over these games with you guys as well. South Carolina demolishes Eastern Illinois. Now, obviously, Eastern Illinois, what community college is that out in the middle of nowhere? South Carolina was looking relatively good. I heard from some people that were there live that there was a lot of mistakes being made on the offensive side of the ball, but a 46-0 win is pretty definitive, and I will not put anything past these guys as well. So definitely a great game for them. Auburn versus Akron. Akron, probably one of the worst teams in the country, so we're not going to say too much about them in this win. But Auburn definitely wins 60-10, and a lot of people are jumping on the wagon saying Auburn is ready to go. They have the new coach, but we'll see what happens. There's not much going on there from that game. There's not much that you can see from that game, in my opinion, but we'll see how they end up doing as well. Georgia Clemson. I didn't even bring that up until now, just because that game, there's nothing you can say about it except, holy cow, nobody expected that. Not a single person I spoke to. I mean, I even did a poll on the Guys at the Bar Talking Sports Facebook group. I said, if you can predict the score, I'll give you a beer, or I'll buy you a beer. And everyone was 48 to 30, 40 this to 30 that. Most people thought Georgia would win. That was kind of the consensus, that Georgia would win. Georgia did win. We all know that. Defensive game, nothing. The only touchdown was a defensive touchdown. Georgia scoops and, what was it, a pick six? They run it in and score a touchdown against Clemson. Score was 10-3. Clemson was just getting demolished on the offensive side of the ball. Ugalele just was in a situation where he was in over his head. The line could not protect him. He was getting sacked like nobody's business. All you can say, Georgia's defense was looking on fire. Georgia's offense has a lot to work on. Clemson's defense was on fire. Clemson's offense has a lot to work on. That's all you can say. Now, Clemson, with this one loss, is expected to win the rest of the season. They're expected to win out. And with North Carolina's performance, the only team that I thought might be able to beat them in the ACC championship, probably not going to happen. I saw Pitt was in a situation where they played pretty solid against a UConn team this week. So I was thinking, and I was thinking that Clemson might be able to might lose to Pitt, but who knows? There are sometimes some pretty major upsets in the ACC against Clemson, so we'll see what happens. But Georgia's looking on fire. They should be ranked in the top 4, obviously, this week. Most likely they'll be ranked number 2 or 3 with that win against Clemson. Excellent game. Texas A&M 41-10 against Kent State. Texas A&M breaking in a new quarterback. It doesn't seem like they had too many problems putting up some points, but it's against Kent State. You know, those are those opening weekend games that everyone wishes for, so they can just kind of practice things and throw some balls up and see what happens. Vanderbilt, can you believe this? Eastern Tennessee State. Where on earth is he? I think Eastern Tennessee State is in Johnson City, which is just a small college in Johnson City, Tennessee. And they beat Vanderbilt 23-3. Now, this should never happen in college football with a team that's in a conference like the SEC. But this just shows that Vanderbilt is going to be a layup for every team that plays them this year. UCLA versus LSU. Our boy Ripper the Predictor predicted this one too. He said that he thought that UCLA would win. And LSU was in duress. They had the hurricane last week as well. So they were practicing, they were not practicing on their... They were probably not prepared for this game is what Ripper was saying. He says that's why he thinks that LSU might lose this game. Now, that's a good excuse. That is a good excuse that they can use this week. But next week, they better not make any excuses because they need to win a lot of games this season. But a lot of people are saying LSU is going to be a 6-6 team this year. UCLA, 2 wins, 1 against Hawaii, 1 against LSU. That's pretty huge. You could pretty much say that UCLA will be in the top 25 this week, and definitely a team to be looking at in the West out there at the Pac-12. So see what happens. That is definitely, LSU better put something together. I'm going to check to see who they're playing next week, just so I can let you all know. LSU is going to be playing against McNeese State next week. So that's definitely a game that they don't have to worry about losing. But they do have a rough schedule going after the after the 4th week. So they have Central Michigan. They should definitely win that game. But then they have Mississippi State, Auburn, Kentucky, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, And then the next game they have is November 13th, Arkansas. So after the next two games, they have a lot of teams that can beat them. Kentucky can beat them at this point, I believe that. Mississippi State, they were looking a little bit weak They were not looking good this week at all. They ended up winning the game, barely winning that game. Auburn was looking solid. I think that LSU is going to have a tough time, but we'll see what happens with them as well. And those are all of the games that I wanted to bring up to you guys this week. But come on back next week. I'm going to go ahead and do this on a regular basis for you as well, every week after that football. So what I don't want to be doing is talking about last week's games during the live show that we do every Thursday in the bar. So I'm going to go ahead and go over these, maybe bring in a guest here and there as well to talk about it with me, and then do these live shows that we're actually talking about the week ahead. So I hope you enjoyed this format, and come on back next week and I will go ahead and go over week 2 of college football. I know what you're thinking. Man, that was an amazing show. You know what you should do then? You subscribe to the show. By subscribing, you'll be able to hear the show next week and every show that we come out with from here on out. And then if you really like the show, the thing that you can do is you give it a 5-star rating and review. Whatever podcast you listen to, see if you can give it a 5-star rating and review. I know you can do it on Apple iTunes. And then you know what you do? You come on back next week to hear Guys at the Bar talking sports.